This is a good thing that the judge will televise Trump's Georgia trial. It will let everybody see how Trump truly is.
A fourth not guilty plea from the former president, Donald Trump, this one in Georgia. Thursday, he waived a court appearance and a formal arraignment in the 2020 election interference case. By doing so, the former reality show star avoids having to enter his plea on camera. Although the judge affirmed Thursday that all of the trials for Trump and his co-defendants will be live streamed and televised. CBS News chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett joins us now. Major, you and I spoke after President Trump's first arraignment in Manhattan. Compare that and what went on to his decision to waive arraignment in the Georgia case and give me your analysis of the difference.
So if you remember back to that first indictment, John, and I know the nation does, there was a sense of wonder bordering on disbelief because the question hung in the air for months before District Attorney Alvin Bragg made that decision to indict the former president. What was that question? Oh my gosh, could a former president actually be criminally indicted? The answer was yes, and it had a shock to it. By the fourth indictment for former President Trump, that shock has definitely worn off. The difference between the cases is significant. In New York, it's a case about business records and whether or not a hush money payment to a former porn star by a former president is something that constitutes a felony crime. That will be sorted out in the New York courts. In Georgia, the case is of constitutional significance. Why do I say that? Because the Constitution in Articles 1 and 2 sets up time, manner, and place for elections and the Electoral College and the votes and how they're allocated. Both, the DA in Fulton County alleges, were sought to be overturned in a conspiratorial fashion by the president and his co-defendants. That's Georgia protecting its rights to conduct a free and fair election. That is not only constitutionally significant, it is significant for the furtherance of this great American democratic experiment. That's why I think Georgia, though last, should be regarded as the first most important indictment of the former president.
Let's stay in Georgia. The former president and his allies have been attacking the Democratic prosecutor, Fani Willis, in this case. Georgia's Republican governor, Brian Kemp, who's a part of this narrative, too. What's his reaction been to those calls that he should speak out about this prosecutor?
That he's not going to allow them, that he's not going to tolerate them, and he's not going to give them any more political oxygen. The governor made it very clear that the district attorney is operating within the powers of her office and protecting the interests of the state of Georgia. There is a bill that he signed as governor that creates a body within the legislature to evaluate district attorneys, but the governor said this is not a case where the district attorney has done anything other than protect the interests of the state. And it's worth reminding ourselves, John, that Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, has real lived political experience with election denialism in his state. The person who ran against him in the most recent Republican primary in 2022 was an election denier. And Brian Kemp not only won, he won by a thumpingly large margin, and so did his Secretary of State.
That just goes to show that most people in Georgia do not deny the election. They're not idiots, which is great because if the election denier won, Trump probably would not have been charged in Georgia.
Brad Raffensperger, challenged in both cases by Republicans who denied the 2020 election. So Brian Kemp has weathered those political storms, and he said today as governor, I'm going to protect the interest of Georgia and protect this district attorney who is, his opinion, defending them.
Another character in the Georgia case, Kenneth Chesbrough, one of the architects of this fake electors scheme. He's been granted a speedy trial. That starts on the 23rd of October. Former President Trump requested to separate his case from Chesbrough. But if one of the 19 indicted has their case start, how do you think, what's your assessment of how a televised hearing in October laying out the whole story will affect or interact with Trump's political campaign?
It will put a question that has been around the Trump reelection campaign or battle for the Republican nomination, then possibly reelection for months and months and months. Is there any basis whatsoever in Trump's allegations about the 2020 election in general or in Georgia specifically? This case, once it goes to trial and be televised, will tear apart much of that remaining rhetorical infrastructure because there is no evidence to support the conspiratorial acts and questions that were being raised about that election. People can have doubts and can express them on their First Amendment basis, of course, but they can't take actions on the basis of their government power, deceive those in other positions of power to overturn an election. That's the essence of the conspiracy charge. If that case is brought forward and Cheeseborough is convicted, that will send a signal, not only to former President Trump, but all the other co-defendants, that the arguments you are bringing before a court of law are weak and prosecution is coming.
Major Garrett.